All right, well, I'm getting ready to start working on the station wagon again. Right now I'm in the stage where I'm gonna make the mounts to mount the body to the frame. I ran into a couple problems that slowed me down. The first one is the tire is hitting the wheel well because it sticks out too far. And I don't wanna go in with it because then I would have to start messing with the trailing arms back here. And in the future, I plan to possibly put a wider tire on the back, up to a 10.5-inch wide tire. So I need to accommodate for that as well. And the car sits right now higher than I want. So the wheel definitely needs to tuck up into that fender way better. So this side, because I got the parts card, I already have the quarter panel to fix this, but I didn't want to start cutting it till I knew what I was doing. So I had to kind of play with some ideas of how I'm gonna extend out the quarter panel before I cut any of it. So I was playing with that idea for a long time, and I think I got it figured out. The other problem that I ran into back here is the body mount. I'm supposed to take some of that rectangle steel I have right there. I'm gonna run across, but it's gonna hit this brace, because that's where I wanted to start, was a bar across in the back for the back body mounts, and it's already hitting the bracing I have. So I need to weld in some different metal, then cut out this old bracing. So I found this like these metal handles right here, but I'm gonna run these in place of the old ones, and then this will raise it up right here. So that's will hopefully create the gap I need to get the metal in there now, and then the bracing won't be a problem. And then I cut a bunch more angle iron, so I got a bunch of new metal ready to throw in there. So here's the other station wagon, the parts car. I'm trying to mimic the stock body line right here, all the way down. And then I want to keep that face, and then I want to double that face up back right here. So it's kind of like that, and to where it rides the original body line. So like right here. So it rides that body line all the way out. And I made this with cardboard and masking tape, and then I just put some paint on it. You can kind of see where it sticks out from the body right there. It sticks out at least 1.5 inch from the widest part of the quarter panel. And then also one thing I realized when I started doing it is I have this slope in the back, and I want to mimic that in the front. So it has the slope in the back and the slope in the front. And then this face, so it's almost like a mirror image of each other, front to back. And then this face, I want it to match this face. And that's basically how I'm going to try to make it. I just did it on here with cardboard and tape first, so I knew what I was doing before I started cutting up body panels. All right, so I got in the new bracing. So I ran one solid piece across here, then 2 pieces to join in the middle right here. Because where this piece went down, it had to kind of go on some of the old tubing that needs cut out. So I ran some angle iron across this way, and then across the top. And then in each corner, I put a brace connecting where this old tubing met up with the bracing. I did one in each corner, just to add a little extra support. So now I'm gonna go in here and cut out the old bracing that's down lower, and then I should have plenty of room to get in there and start doing the mount. Okay, so I got the old bracing out now, and you can see I have the body pads right in there. So the rubber isolators between the frame and the body. And I'm going to run basically steel rectangle tubing about the size of a 2x4 across. And then I'm gonna like replicate where the subframe was to connect the old subframe back to the front subframe, which is really overkill for this because all it really needs to do is mount the body, but it'll make it really strong if I do it that way. But as you can see, when I had the rubber cushion in there before, I could not get the 2x4 in. So now there's plenty of room to get in there and start getting the pieces in. And I don't think this moved around on me at all, but you know, hopefully it didn't tweak or anything crazy, but it should be good. All right, I'm in the process of cutting the quarter panel out now. I still gotta cut out more on this side because of the damage, but right now I'm just cutting to clearance the tire. So right here, I'm going to cut in between where the molding used to go, And so I retain a little bit of where I want it to meet back up at the rocker panel, because I don't want it to go, I want the rocker panel to swoop down still. So I'm gonna cut it halfway and leave a little bit of a tang. I would do the same here, but it's all crushed in. So I'm gonna have to probably cut this out and then rebuild the bottom and like all this that's messed up, and then reconnect the piece. I'm gonna cut right along here and then down, and I'm cutting about 32 inches from the door jamb on both sides. Trying to grind the corner down, thinking I would see the seam pop. And then I was trying to grind spot welds, and it was not popping the spot weld good at all. I decided I'm just gonna go in here and cut out the inside, and then I can worry about removing that lip later. So this is the other side, pretty much the same thing. This quarter panel is just not damaged as bad. So I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna cut basically in between where the trim used to go down here, and then cut 32 inches back from the door jamb, and then basically an inch above the body line right here, all the way across. And then I'll cut out all the way around that, and then right there at the, in between the trim again. And then once I get that out, hopefully I can kind of get in there, and I gotta cut probably from the inside to the outside, I gotta cut some of the inner fender well and stuff like that. Yeah, I already cut up right here, and I kind of toyed with cutting right there. Right now I'm gonna just go ahead and make that cut across right there. All right, I got both sides cut on the outside, and I went ahead and got the wheel off so I can figure out how I'm gonna go in here and cut this. There's a lot of undercoating in there. Eventually I wanna cut it at the highest apex of the fender well, so you know where it concaves up, I wanna get it right at the top of that and bring it out. Once I cut inside the fender well lip on the other side of the spot welds, I can get this whole chunk out. Once this whole chunk is out, I'll have access to the inner fender well, and then I can cut it from there, and I don't have to cut into all the undercoating and stuff like that. It'd be just a little cleaner to cut it this way. This lip is like 3/4 of an inch or an inch, so that's gonna save me even more space too. So this is gonna get cut out anyways. All right, so I have the outer skin of the quarter panels cut off on both sides, and I went and found this old tire, 28 inches tall, and it's about 9 inches, 10 inches wide. The biggest tire I'm ever probably gonna run on this is 28 inches tall, 10.5 inch wide. I'm gonna build the car around a tire that size. The only thing is this inner fender well actually sits higher up on this side than it does on the other side. So what I'm gonna do is cut the other side exactly how I want, and then I'll measure the height of this and then make them equal. But I'm gonna use this tire right now as like a little bit of a placeholder to try to help me with my fitment. And I'm gonna go ahead and start cutting out the inner fender well. I'm gonna start with the other side. So you can see a little bit the inner fender well. I'm gonna cut it right along this beam that comes down from the top. And you can see how this side's different over here. But you can see how it rounds down right here. So I'm gonna cut it all the way up here, all the way across. And then I'm gonna bring it out straight. So I won't have any of this roundness I can hit. I'm gonna have a bunch of fender well, and then it's gonna go straight to the new outer fender well. So the inner fender well is gonna be way bigger, because the fender well was right up against this, but then you see it lost just like almost an inch, inch and a half of space alone with this. Well, this lip stuck out at the bottom too. So just by redoing the inner fender well alone is gonna gain me a lot of space. So I'm gonna probably gain about 2 or 3 inches of space in there, counting redoing the inner fender well and then bringing out the outer fender well about 1.5 inches. After I got the quarter panels cut off, I went ahead and reattached the panels so I could get a look of what's going on. And the reason I got the tire to tuck right now is I took the rear springs out and I put the frame on jack stands. Then I also put the rear end on blocks right here. So it's on blocks on this board, and that's kind of, the idea that was to simulate the ground so I could get a good measurement of like ground to frame height. Because where I had it originally, when you center the tire, you actually, the center of the tire changes with the height, with the trailing arm. This is probably the lowest I can go and like still have a decent ride. This is kind of where I'm sitting it at. And so I recentered the body after I did this. So now I'm shooting for 1 7/8 on both sides, you know, basically get it centered in the back. I had the fender up so I could get a better idea. But with it centered back here at 1 7/8 on each side, front of the wheel actually touches the front of the fender, which I knew it was gonna be a tight fit, but that definitely, the fender definitely is gonna need modified for it to fit really good. But I just wanted to double check exactly where I wanted the frame to sit, like precisely. Now I'm gonna go ahead and put in like some marks down here on the rocker panel to the frame so I know like where it's gonna sit. And then I'm gonna put the suspension back in, and then I can start working on the mounts. All right, so I made these clamps right here to go ahead and clamp the top of the rocker panel and then underneath the frame. And then I put a little spacer about, you know, 5/16 or so in between the top of the rocker panel and the frame. And so there's 4 spacers, 4 clamps at each corner. That's gonna hold the frame at the same depth across the board inside the rocker panel. So I tried using a C-clamp here, but the frame is set in more than the top of the rocker panel, so it wasn't allowing the C-clamp to sit right. I made these clamps out of some old angle iron bed frame and got some all thread and then just some hardware. I'm $15 in on all 4 clamps, but then they were still not clamping right, so what I had to do was make these spacers so it stops the metal from deflecting, and there's some fine tuning into getting these right. But basically I would just lay the pieces where I want, measure the distance, and then I'd take like a 1/16 of an inch off. And so that gives it room to smush down. And then I'd still have to, you know, maybe play with it from there. Yeah, so I got all these clamps made on all 4 corners, and now I can go ahead and move the body in the exact location that it's gonna sit at. And then I can clamp it in, and then I can go ahead and start building the mounts. Yeah, you can kind of see the spacer right there. These aren't finalized right now, so this spacer you can maybe see a little easier because it's not in the perfect spot. Yeah, see, it's on the frame and the rocker panel. So it's just hard to get it to, because they're offset, to not deflect, but took some work, but that's gonna work really good. And here's the other side. Again, not in their final spot, but I finally got the clamps to clamp down perfect, and now I can go ahead and loosen them up. Then I can adjust the body exactly where I want it and then go ahead and clamp it in.